$2.2 billion, 10 million tickets, 149 stadium shows, an average ticket price of about $218, an average crowd of 70,000 people every single night. Those are Taylor Swift's Eras Tour numbers. And that's before we even get to the part that matters most for this video. Because the ticket sales are only layer one. The real story starts outside the stadium. Because Taylor Swift is no longer just a pop star. She is a moving economy. When Eras Tour hits a city, it doesn't only sell seats. It fills hotel rooms. It moves flights. It overloads restaurant bookings. It pushes up rideshare demand. It drives spending on outfits, makeup, food, bars, fan events, museum tie-ins, branded experiences, and merch before people even get to the venue. That's why this story is bigger than music. Taylor Swift doesn't only perform in cities. For a weekend, she changes how they spend. And here's where the numbers get ridiculous. According to the US Travel Association, Swifties were spending about $1,300 on average in local economies on travel, hotels, food, merchandise, and costumes. Their point was simple. The spending around Taylor Swift looked like Super Bowl level spending, except it happened across 53 nights in 20 US cities. That is the difference between a big event and a repeatable money machine. That distinction matters. A lot of people hear that Eras Tour grossed $2.2 billion and assume that's the whole story. It isn't. That $2.2 billion is the tour itself. The tickets, the direct box office engine. Massive on its own, historic on its own, already enough to make this the highest grossing tour ever. Yet once you step outside the turnstiles, the number starts multiplying across the rest of the city. Think about what one Taylor Swift weekend actually looks like. Tens of thousands of people arrive from somewhere else. Many of them are staying overnight. A lot of them aren't showing up in regular concert clothes either. They're buying themed outfits, friendship bracelet kits, accessories, makeup, drinks, photo op experiences, late night food, and the kind of impulse spending people justify because this is not just a concert. It's an event they've been planning for months. That is a completely different economic profile from somebody casually going downtown for dinner. And you can see it city by city. London expected Taylor Swift's 8 Wembley shows to bring nearly 700,000 people and generate a £300 million boost to the capital's economy. That is why the city leaned all the way in. Special promotions, custom experiences, even a Taylor-themed tube map. Because once an event reaches that size, the city stops treating it like entertainment and starts treating it like economic activity. Toronto is another perfect example. Destination Toronto estimated that 6 shows would bring more than $282 million in economic impact and over $152 million in direct spending. Nearly 93% of that direct spending was expected to come from out-of-town visitors. About 240,000 concertgoers were expected across the 6 dates, and hotel bookings in downtown Toronto were pacing nearly 83% ahead of the same time the year before. That is not a normal concert footprint. That is what happens when fandom behaves like tourism. And that line right there may be the most important line in the whole video. Fandom starts acting like tourism. Because that's when the money spreads beyond the artist. The stadium gets paid, the promoter gets paid, Taylor gets paid. But so do hotels, so do bars, so do restaurants, so do drivers, so do makeup stores, so do souvenir shops, so do museums running special tie-ins. So do all the businesses that suddenly find themselves sitting next to a cultural hurricane. That's why this is such a fascinating money story. The artist is the center of gravity. The spending radiates outward. And here's the part that makes the whole thing feel even bigger. Back in 2023, the Federal Reserve's Beige Book actually noted that May was the strongest month for hotel revenue in Philadelphia since the onset of the pandemic, in large part because of guests coming in for Taylor Swift concerts. Think about how unusual that is. The Fed is not in the business of hyping pop stars. When Taylor Swift shows up in a Federal Reserve economic snapshot, you are not looking at celebrity gossip anymore. You are looking at a measurable commercial event. Now pause there for a second, because this is where most people miss the real lesson. The biggest money story around Taylor Swift isn't that one woman sold a lot of tickets. Plenty of artists sell tickets. The bigger story is that she built a demand system so strong that entire cities can feel the aftershock. That's rare. Very rare. And it only happens when several things stack on top of each other at the same time. First, the audience is huge. Second, the audience is emotionally committed. Third, the event feels once in a generation. Fourth, people are willing to travel. And fifth, the experience spills far beyond the venue itself. That combination is where regular concert economics turn into something closer to temporary urban economics. And this is where things get even more interesting. Because if you look at Taylor Swift through a business lens, what she has really built is not just music demand. She's built trip demand. That is a much more powerful category. A song can live in your headphones. A tour can live in your calendar. Yet when fans start booking flights, hotels, restaurants, outfits, and extra days around the event, the product is no longer just the concert. The product becomes the entire weekend. That shift is enormous. It means Taylor Swift is no longer only competing with other artists. In a strange way, she's competing with vacations, destination events, and major sports weekends for a share of consumer spending. And that explains why the numbers explode so fast. Because once the concert becomes the reason for the trip, every dollar around the trip starts attaching itself to the artist's economic orbit. That's how you go from a ticketed show to a citywide cash wave. Now, to be fair, this is where a little nuance matters. Not every economic impact number means pure new wealth appeared out of nowhere. Reuters noted that economists are often skeptical about huge event impact claims because some of that spending would have happened somewhere else anyway, just on different goods or services or at a different time. That's an important caveat. It keeps the video honest. Taylor Swift is not rewriting national GDP by herself. Yet at the local level, the spending shock is still very real, especially for the businesses that benefit during those exact weekends. And honestly, that nuance makes the story better, not weaker, because the most credible version of this story is not Taylor Swift magically creates infinite money. It's this. Taylor Swift is so commercially powerful that she can redirect huge amounts of consumer spending across travel, hospitality, retail, and nightlife with the force of a major live event brand. That is still an insane sentence, and it leads to a deeper question. Why her? Why does Taylor Swift move money at this scale while most artists, even successful ones, do not? Part of it is catalog size. Part of it is fan loyalty. Part of it is cultural timing. Part of it is the structure of Eras Tour itself, which turned the concert into a giant emotional recap of multiple versions of her career. Yet a huge part of it is something even simpler. She gave people an experience they felt they could not miss. That is one of the most valuable things in business. Scarcity helps. Emotional connection helps. Cultural momentum helps. Still, the real jackpot is when your audience stops asking, "Do I want this?" and starts asking, "How do I make sure I'm there?" That is where spending becomes aggressive. That's when people justify travel. That's when they spend on the outfit. That's when they extend the trip. That's when city governments start publishing economic estimates and tourism boards start building special landing pages because they know a concert is about to behave like a citywide demand surge. And this gives you a much more useful way to understand celebrity wealth. A lot of people look at star power too narrowly. They think in album sales, streaming numbers, maybe ticket revenue. Those matter. Yet the modern jackpot is broader. The real jackpot is when your brand becomes a platform other industries can monetize around you. Hotels monetize around Taylor. Airlines monetize around Taylor. Restaurants monetize around Taylor. Transit systems monetize around Taylor. Retail monetizes around Taylor. Tourism boards monetize around Taylor. At that point, the artist is no longer just the seller. They are the trigger. And the people who understand that build something much larger than fame. They build economic gravity. That's exactly what Taylor Swift has done. She built a touring event so large that the direct number is already historic. Then she built enough emotional intensity around it that the indirect numbers became absurd too. 2.2 billion in tour gross is massive. The bigger idea is that the total spending orbit around those shows is much larger than what happens at the ticket checkout alone. So if you wanted the simplest answer to the question, how much money does Taylor Swift really move? The honest answer is billions on the tour itself, hundreds of millions at the city level, and a spending wave so visible that tourism boards, city halls, and even the Federal Reserve have felt the need to talk about it. That is not normal entertainer money. That is economic event money. And maybe that's the cleanest way to end this. Taylor Swift did not just become one of the biggest artists in the world. She became one of the few artists who can arrive in a city and make the local economy noticeably louder. That's a very different level of influence.